Sometimes it's the simpler things in life that often have the best results. But when it comes to those that are considered wise, they just simply can't understand it. Well, when it comes to Colin Cowherd, he can't understand why the Lions continue to do what they do. We're going to talk about it. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to tell you this right now. I know that for some folks, they would much rather prefer if I didn't talk about what analysts are saying about the Detroit Lions. Trust me. Whenever I've made these videos, there's at least a couple of comments here or there that are like, why do you spend time talking about this? Why do you give this stuff air? Why do you allow it to bother you? The reason why is because I believe firmly in that if you don't do anything to try and keep it in check, then what's the incentive for people to not do it in the first place? Here's the thing. Yes, I understand that the people that are in mainstream media, they are going out there and they're making those topics, they're making all that stuff because they're looking for clicks, they're looking for people to watch their show, they're there to make money. Here's the problem though. The reason they're doing that is because the normal person that doesn't actually take the time to step back and say, okay, here, let me think about this doesn't make any sense, they're just going to keep on doing that, and then that's where you're going to have people that start getting into these conversations. My job is to push back against that and to get people to start thinking, and then that's when you start noticing that these freaking commentators, these analysts, they start having to reverse course all of a sudden. Case in point, what happened with Nick Wright yesterday? It's kind of interesting that 2 to 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, after he said Jared Goff was a civilian quarterback, he's now saying he's going to win the MVP. Now, am I saying I have a direct correlation in that? No. But I know for a fact I probably have an indirect correlation with it. Because guys like that, they don't just all of a sudden on a whim decide to say, oh, you know what? I made this statement 2-3 weeks ago. Now I'm going to reverse course. Not unless something has prompted them to do so. Which typically 9 times out of 10 has nothing to do with what the player itself is doing on the field. It has to do more with what people on the outside, their viewers, their subscribers, are thinking. So think about that. If I have the ability to influence other people outside rather than those that are on the networks, that's going to get them to change their narrative. Well, that's why we're having this conversation yet again with a different analyst, aka Colin Cowherd. Again, everybody knows who Colin Cowherd is. He's one of the biggest sportscasters in the business right now. Guys like Stephen A. Smith have worked with him and a couple of others. Well, why are we talking about Colin Cowherd? The reason why we're talking about him is because recently Colin Cowherd got on his morning show and, for lack of a better term, he was critical. He was not very supportive of the fact that Dan Campbell was continuing to do the same things that he's always done with the Detroit Lions. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what he said specifically, and we're going to break it down. Which, again, it's a 3-part quote because it's a massive quote. But, again, if you stick with me, you'll see where I'm going with this. So, you're going to hear some clicks in the background as I go back and forth between the quote because I have it on my computer. I didn't write it down because writer's cramp, folks. So, let's take a look at what Colin Cowherd said in the first part of his quote. He said this, and I quote, he said, operating in absolutes usually does not end well. Just think about that. Dan Campbell now coaches like we always go for it on 4th down. But you know the teams that since Dan Campbell arrived in the NFL don't go for it on 4th down? Do you know who they are? The Chiefs, the Bills, and the 49ers. They protect leads. You're no longer the hunter, you're the hunted. You're now IBM. You're not a startup company. Okay. So when we take a look at that quote for what it is, the point of the matter is that what Colin Cowherd is trying to say is that, hey, Back when we were, the team that was 3-13-1, we were 1-6 to start 2022. Taking those risks, taking the ability to go for it on fourth down, that made sense because we're not protecting leads. We're trying to gain leads. We're trying to win games. So for him, that makes total sense. But now that we're actually, maintaining leads, we have leads in virtually every single game we have, to him, that doesn't make sense. Okay, that's an interesting point of thought of logic because it does make sense to a certain degree. So what did Colin Cowherd say in the next part of the quote? Again, here are a couple clicks. Here's what you're going to hear and see. So the second part of the quote was this. He then said, Dan Campbell can no longer be a pro wrestler living up to the gimmick. They lead the NFL in fourth down attempts and fourth down conversions. He's talking about us, obviously. And you feel great this morning, and this was after the game against the Packers on Thursday night, but that's not who you are anymore. It's like when you're young, you put your money in Bitcoin. When you're old, you put it in bonds. It's a different life. Okay, so let's understand what's going on here. When you take a look at the situation for what it is, pretty much what he's trying to say is that because the circumstances of who we are as a team have changed, Dan Campbell has to change. We have to change what, in essence, got us to where we are. Because, we're no longer the team that, doesn't have a whole lot of talent. We have to try and come up with these crazy, ridiculous things to get the lead so that way we can win games. He's trying to say that because we as a team have changed, Dan Campbell's coaching staff and coaching mantra and style has to change with it. Okay. Again, a very interesting concept. But again, that was only the second part. There's a third part to this quote. And then once we hear it, we're going to see exactly what Colin Cowherd's trying to piece together here. So what's the third part of the quote? Here's the third part. It says, he's talking about the Lions again. Your players are now in their prime. They're going to get very, very expensive. You're going to have to move off them. You're playing consistently with leads. In my lifetime, I don't ever remember a team winning the Super Bowl having the all-season label of, man, they are risky. New England wasn't. Kansas City isn't. Buffalo isn't. That's not what wins championships. Okay, so in essence, what we have here from Colin Cowherd is that he believes, one, since our team is no longer, poor of talent, doesn't have a whole lot to work with, we shouldn't be going for it as much on fourth down. It's too aggressive, it's too risky. Number two, because of the fact that we have leads, we shouldn't be going for it on fourth down because we're trying to protect leads, we're not trying to advance leads. So to me, that tells me kind of like this whole narrative we've heard the entirety of the year that, the Lions are just trying to, pile on points. They're just trying to stack points, stat pad. And then the final part of that quote is about how, championship caliber teams, championship teams in general, they don't go for it on fourth down. They try to protect leads. They try to protect their players. Okay. I can understand, now that we've gone through all of the quote, I can understand what Colin Cowherd is trying to say here, folks. I really can. He's talking about it from the traditional perspective that the NFL has always done. Hey, you get the lead. You maintain the lead. You only go for it on fourth down when it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you play the field position game. You have your defense do what it has to do. That's been the traditional MO within the NFL since the dawn of freaking time. And that's why Colin Cowherd is pretty much saying that the style of play, the style of coaching that Dan Campbell is doing, Colin Cowherd doesn't approve of it. He thinks it's not going to work. He thinks it's not sustainable. The only problem is that Colin Cowherd does not understand let me put this correctly, that is not how the Lions operate. It's never been how the Lions have operated. Everybody knows that ever since Dan Campbell came into the Detroit Lions organization as the head coach, there was going to be at least three things that were always going to remain consistent about our team. We are going to be hard workers. We are going to bust our ass, go to work every single day. Number 2, it doesn't matter who we play, we are going to give our all 100% of the time. And number 3, it doesn't matter what lead we have, it doesn't matter how far we're down, we are always going to be aggressive. We are never going to be conservative. Those have been the 3 constants ever since Campbell's become the head coach. So the fact that Colin Cowherd is now all of a sudden thinking that, because your team is no longer what it used to be as far as DNA, makeup, roster build, and all that nonsense, that all of a sudden Campbell's going to change that process, that's idiotic on his part. I'm sorry, what's that old saying? A zebra does not change its stripes, or a leopard does not change its spots. You cannot expect that Dan Campbell is all of a sudden going to change what got him to the success he has right now for something completely different. Again, another little saying. You go to the dance with the person that brought you there. What damn sense would it make for the Lions to say, hey, you know what, Dan, we love exactly what you did to get us here, but now you're going to have to change that up because everybody thinks that that's not the way to win anymore. I'd be like, who the hell thinks about that? I'd be like, what the hell do they know? I'd be like, are they the ones on the sideline coaching? Are they the one on the sideline making the decisions? Hell no, they're not. I'm the one that's making the decisions. And let's think about this, folks. Let's take a look actually at Dan Campbell's decision-making record from the perspective of what the Lions have done since he's been here. Because one of the things that Colin Cowherd said is that the Lions have the most fourth down conversions and fourth down attempts since the beginning of Dan Campbell's time as the head coach, which that is true. That is definitely true, and we'll talk about that. But let me put something out there for you. You want to know what Dan Campbell's record is as the Detroit Lions head coach since he started in 2021? It's 36, 27, and 1. That's for the regular season. We're not talking about postseason. 36, 27, and 1. That has a winning percentage of .575. You want to know what that equates to in terms of the entirety of Lions head coaches' history for win-loss records? It's the 4th highest in the entirety of Lions franchise head coaching history. Think about that, folks. Dan Campbell's only been a head coach for the Detroit Lions now on his 4th year, and he's already got the 4th highest win percentage. That's pretty damn impressive if I do say so myself. Because think about it. All the head coaches that the Lions have had, quite a lot of them have not even gotten over 500 win percentage. But freaking Dan Campbell has. And to put it even in more perspective, I'm going to try and put this up if I can. Out of all the head coaches that are above Dan Campbell in terms of win percentage, only one has a higher win percentage despite having less time as a head coach for the Lions. You want to know who it is? It's Hall of Fame coach player for the Detroit Lions, Dutch Clark, from 1937 to 1938. So we're talking about all the way back to when they first started being the Lions. Think about that. The only person with less time as a head coach that has a higher win percentage than Dan Campbell is the legendary Dutch Clark. I'd say that puts Dan Campbell in some pretty damn prestigious company now, don't you? But wait a minute here. There's more to this little aspect that I want to go on. Campbell is also tied in Lions coaching history for the most division championships. As we already know, he has 1. But here's the funny part. The Lions are 12-1. There's about, I would say, greater than an 85 to 90% chance they're going to wrap up a second division win this year. Well, think about this, folks. If Dan Campbell gets that second division title, he will be tied for first in that category with Wayne Fontes, because Wayne Fontes had 2 division titles. So, again, think about that. In 4 years, Dan Campbell is in the top 5 for all of Lions head coaches for win percentage. And by the end of this year, chances are he's going to be tied with Wayne Fontes for having the most division titles. That's damn impressive. So let me put it this way. If Colin Cowherd is saying that doesn't allow you to win, that's not the recipe to win, please explain this to me, Colin Cowherd. How can you argue with the results with a franchise that over the last 20-something years couldn't win anything except constantly being the lovable losers and getting laughed at every single time we played on Sunday, to now we are, that's right, we're considered Super Bowl contenders, we're on the verge of winning 2 division titles in a row, which has not happened in like almost ever, and then on top of that, here's my next point. Let's think about this, folks. When Dan Campbell got started, it was not a pretty picture. We finished the first year 3-13-1, and we started the second year going into week 9 being 1-6. So yeah, didn't start very well for the Dan Campbell regime because up until that week 9 game against the Packers, Dan Campbell's record as a head coach was 4-19-1. It was not pretty. But think about this, folks. Since that week 9 game in 2022, which was November 6th of 2022, you want to know what the Lions' record has been with Dan Campbell since then? It went from being 4-19-1 to 32-8. Since that game, we've lost 8 regular season games. Because think about it. We lost 2 regular season games after that game in the 2002 season. Then we lost 5 in the freaking year of 2023, and we've only lost 1 this year. So there's your 8 losses versus the other 32 wins. So wait a minute here. I'm not a mathematician, but 8, 16, 24, 32. Man, oh man, Dan Campbell has a 4-1 win-loss ratio since that freaking victory in week 9 of 2022. My God, he's got to be doing something wrong because if we're going for it on 4th down all the damn time, that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, according to Colin Cowherd. Please try and make sense of that one, please, because I'm sorry. I would much rather have the 32-8 record versus the 4-19-1 record. Just saying. And I think almost everybody else in the entirety of the NFL would have the same thought process, don't you think? But let's even go further down this little rabbit hole. Because again, I know some people are going to be like, oh yeah, David, you keep telling Colin Cowherd. I actually like Colin Cowherd, probably the most out of all the mainstream, sportscasters, because more often than not, he actually makes sense. But the reason why I'm lambasting him in this one is because it simply does not make sense. Because here's another further point into this. Again, that 32-8 record that I just talked about since November 6th of 2022, right? Mind you, not only is that an awesome, near incomprehensible record for the Lions over that time frame, you want to know what's even more funny about it? It's the best record in the NFL since that time. The Lions have a 32-8 record since that time. You want to know who are the next 3 best ones? The Chiefs at 31-8, the Bills at 28-10, and the Eagles at 27-11. So again, not only have we done an extremely better job of what we were when we started with Dan Campbell, but we're doing so well that we are outpacing the rest of the NFL in that category. Oh, and just to put this into further perspective, not only do the Lions have the best record since November 6th of 2022, we also have scored the most points since November 6th of 2022. We have scored 1,158 points. You want to know where those other 3 teams are in that category comparatively to the Lions? The Chiefs have scored 933 points, which is ranked 9th. The Bills have scored 1,058 points, which is right behind us. So think about that. They've scored 100 less points than us. 100 less points than us. That's kind of impressive. And then the Eagles are ranked 6th with 1,005 points. So not only are we outpacing the rest of the NFL in terms of wins over that time span that I'm talking about, we're outpacing the rest of the NFL in points scored. Hence the reason why we're outpacing the NFL in the entirety of wins. So again, going forward on 4th down seems to have its merits. And what's funny about it is that Dan Campbell has been doing this ever since he got into being the Lions head coach. But Colin Cowherd is saying that the Lions going for it all the time, that, that's not good. And that somehow we need to lessen it because we're not going to win that way. Okay, so I decided to take a look at what Colin Cowherd is saying. And like I said, he is correct. We have the most attempts and conversions in 4th downs since 2021. We've had 78 conversions to 141 attempts, which ranks to 55.3 conversion percentage rate, which is 10th best. But again, since the time frame I'm talking about of November 6th of 2022, so week 9 of that year, the Lions have gone for it 79 times and converted 47 times. That comes out to a 59.5 conversion percentage rate. Almost 60% of the time the Lions are converting for it on 4th down. That's 7th best in that time frame. So wait a minute here. Ever since we started winning, we've continued to convert at the same pace, if not actually, better than what we were prior to, and yet we have won 32 games out of 40. So again, kind of putting this into the perspective that it is, hey, you continue to do what you were doing prior to it, but yet you're now winning a lot more. Okay, so you know what that's called in my world? That's called a correlation. Because, we're continuing to do what we continue to do at the very beginning, but now we're winning more. Seems to me there's a correlation there. Seems to me there's a pattern there. But that's not the only thing I want to talk about here, because what I will say is this. The reason why we're converting more on fourth down is not just because of the fact that Dan Campbell is still remaining aggressive. That is part of it. But the other part of it is because of the talent that we have. Just to put this in perspective here. Everybody wants to say that a quarterback should be able to help a team win regardless of the talent. I have argued against that point I don't know how many times because I've always said the same thing. A quarterback needs a good supporting cast in order to win. If you don't believe me, take a look at the fact of how freaking Patrick Mahomes has been playing this year with the supporting cast he currently has. The fact that the Chiefs are 11-1 is more about due to the fact of luck, and they've got a really damn good defense with Steve Spagnuolo, and that Andy Reid is a great head coach. That's not because of how Patrick Mahomes has been playing, because Patrick Mahomes has played like booty cheeks this year. But let's put this in the context of Jared Goff and the team pre-November 6th, 2022 versus Week 9 onward of that time frame. Take a look at what Goff's numbers were when the team was not all that good, when the team didn't have a whole lot of talent. Jared Goff, for the first year and a half that he was here, this was his numbers compared to the rest of the NFL. He had a 65.7 completion percentage rate, ranked 16th. He had a little bit under 5,300 yards, ranked 14th. Had a 6.9 average per throw, ranked 22nd. 33 touchdowns, ranked 13th. 15 interceptions with a 91.6 passer rating, ranked 16th. All those numbers right there pretty much tell me the exact same thing. Jared Goff was playing at an average level comparatively to the other quarterbacks over that time frame because, that's right. We did not have a good team at the time. So Jared Goff was literally trying to rub stones together and trying to make crap work. Hence the reason why his numbers didn't look that good. Hence the reason why if you put a quarterback into a bad situation, I don't care how good they are, they're not going to play well. Because on the flip side of that argument, now let's take a look at how Goff has done since the team has gotten better. Still, again, going forward on fourth down, this is going to rock your world. Since that game against the Packers, November 6th of 2022, this is Goff's numbers against the rest of the NFL. 68.4 completion percentage rate, ranked second. 10,374 yards, ranked first. 7.8 average to throw, tied for fourth. 72 passing touchdowns, ranked first. 23 interceptions, a 102.6 passer rating, ranked third. Wait a minute here. We've gone from Jared Goff being supposedly only an average quarterback when the roster was, booty cheeks for talent, to now Jared Goff literally has no ranking lower than fourth. No ranking lower than fourth. And that was being tied. So think about it. Jared Goff, since the Week 9 game, November 6th of 2022, has put up top 3 damn numbers. So think about that. That's not a reflection of Goff's talent. That's a reflection of the team's overall talent that Goff had to work with, and to put it in more of a succinct matter, the type of talent that Campbell had to work with. When you have better talent, not only can you do better on the field, you're going to convert more on fourth down, you're going to score more points, which means you're going to win more games. So when Colin Cowherd wants to say that going forward on fourth down, that being aggressive is not who we are, he's freaking hella wrong. That's been who we are since the beginning. That is our mantra. Be aggressive to the last. Does not matter who we're playing. We're always going to be aggressive. We're always going to go for it. Now think about it. We don't go for it every single time, but we go for it a lot more than other teams. But Campbell also recognizes that, hey, sometimes going for it on fourth down is not the best thing, because we've seen Campbell play the field position game before, and it's worked as well. Campbell does not always go for it on fourth down, but he goes for it when it makes a hell of a lot of sense most times. And again, as the stats clearly showed, more often than not, it makes sense. So again, when Colin Cowherd wants to say that's not who we are, again, he doesn't know one, first and foremost, what the hell he's talking about, but also, number two, he doesn't know who the hell we are as a team, as an organization, as a culture. We don't care who you are. We're going to be aggressive no matter what. And, just one last little thing here, since Cowherd wanted to say, I don't remember ever a team that's won the Super Bowl doing this. Well, I'm going to tell you this. In your lifetime, you're going to very shortly find out one that's going to do it. It's going to be the Detroit Lions this year. I am willing to bet my money on that one if I had money to gamble with. But since I'm not, we're going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so, I want to highly encourage y'all, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also encourage y'all, please, to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can, because the more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, whether this is your first time watching me or it's been the upteenth time that you've watched me, I hope y'all enjoyed the content and you got something out of it. I also hope that you got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.